Hello, Bill. This is our second podcast here. So thank you for taking the time again to talk to us about your career. We went through the beginning quite extensively, and we both think that people should watch part one first. So now I've been looking over your career, and I'd really love to ask you about Operation Ashtray. So could we talk about that for a little bit?
Sure. When we came back from the bright light operation, the next thing that came about was Operation Ashtray. And what that was, Colonel Kavanaugh, who was the chief SOG at the time, was wanting us to ambush a NVA convoy or truck in hopes of capturing a truck driver. And so in late '69, he gave that mission to Colonel Abt, the FOB-2 commander, to try and capture an NVA truck driver. Major Jacks was the FOB-2 operations officer at the time, the S3. And so he was tasked with devising the plan of how we would do this. But I think it's maybe important to talk just for a minute about why Chief SOG wanted to capture a truck driver. I mean, that sounds kind of ridiculous, you know. But to appreciate that, you really have to understand how the Ho Chi Minh Trail operated. And first, I guess the Ho Chi Minh Trail was not a trail at all. 1970, it was a series of highways. And it wasn't guys in black pajamas on bicycles. It was North Vietnamese regulars driving trucks. It was going up and down that highway. So think in your mind of a fish net. It wasn't a single highway. It was a series of highways. So when one particular area got bombed, they would just divert around to another bypass, and it was very difficult to stop traffic just with the B-52 bombings that went on. But back to the operation, a truck did not leave North Vietnam with a driver and drive all the way to South Vietnam to unload. That wasn't how it worked. The driver would drive a particular truck from point A to point B, where he would get out, and another driver would drive the truck from point B to point C and so forth. And that first driver would wait at checkpoint B until there was a truck coming back up, headed to North Vietnam, and he would drive the truck back from point B back to point A, and then wait on the next truck coming down. So consequently, a truck driver became very familiar with a 15, 20 kilometer stretch of the road. He knew where all the truck parks were, the POL dumps, the ammo caches, hospitals, command centers, everything about that stretch of road. He was well informed. So to capture a truck driver would be invaluable intelligence that you could collect from this guy. So that's what the operation was all about. So Major Jacks called about a dozen of us in the talk one morning, and he said, I've got a mission. You guys have been selected to run this operation, but you have the option to accept or deny. But I can't tell you what it is until you accept it. We weren't very smart, so we all said, yes, we'll do it. And then he told us that we're going to go and try and capture a truck driver. And he had already devised a plan. His plan was to take a 12-man team, and it would be divided into three elements. There would be a snatch element, the element that would actually capture the driver. There would be an early warning element that would provide early warning as to what was coming down the highway and what kind of truck, did it have troops on it, whatever. And then there would be a diversion element whose mission was to hit the next thing that came down the trail, just to divert attention from the snatch team so that they could get their prisoner and get to an extraction LZ without any more contacts, hopefully. So the snatch team was led by Major Jacks himself, and Daniel Sturr, John Grant, Ray Harris, and one Vietnamese would be on that team. Tim Lynch and Michael Karopis would be the early warning element, and the diversion element was led by Oliver Hartwick and included John Blau, myself, and the Recon Company First Sergeant Forrest Todd. So that was the makeup of the team. We were required to take the two Vietnamese with us, I guess for political reasons, and it turns out that kind of complicated our lives a little bit, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But so anyway, on January 13th, we got on board a Blackbird and flew up to Da Nang for training. We stayed at the Naval Advisory Detachment there, where the SEALs were, and it provided the best OPSEC, operational security, for us, because this was really a hush-hush thing. We didn't want any word getting out that what we were about. And the other thing is, there at the SEAL base, we had pretty much a free fire zone in terms of experimenting with different explosives. We wanted to stop a truck without killing the driver. And so we trained for 7 days, and through a lot of experimentation, we finally decided that the most effective way we could do it would be to have 4 claymores in series connected by det cord. They would be aimed at the tires of the truck. And we actually had a deadline 2.5 ton truck that this Navy guy pulled down the beach behind a wrecker, and we actually blew the truck to see what the response would be, and it actually did stop the truck. We also anticipated that the driver, when the explosion occurred, that he would initially hit the brake, and that would also slow any forward momentum of the truck. So that was the charge that we decided on. And so after 7 days, we loaded up in a Blackbird and flew straight to the launch site at Dak To from Da Nang. And there we, shortly thereafter, boarded helicopters and we inserted. The plan was that we would all insert together on the same LZ. We would move to an RON site, and then the next day we would split. The stats element and the early warning element would go one team, one direction, and the diversion element would go another. And we would be set up about 300 to 400 meters apart. That was the plan. And then also later that day, the diversion element would split off from the snatch element, and they would go a couple 100 meters up the highway to serve as the early warning. So we moved to that first RON position overnight. The next morning, we split into 2 groups and started moving towards Highway 110, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. We were at that point probably roughly 800-900 meters from the road. So we moved all day. The snatch element got to the highway first, and the vegetation was very thick there, and they arrived at the highway really before they realized it, and when they realized they were right there at the road, they just stopped and crouched down. And Ray Harris had an M79, and he was sitting there staring through a hole in the brush, and an NVA came down the road and stopped right in front of him, got down on his knees and looked right at Ray. Ray said he was looking right down the tube of that M79, and just real slowly got up and went back the way he came. So basically, that a snatch element was compromised at that point because they knew that there were Americans in the area. So they were expecting to start taking some incoming fire just any minute. So Major Jacks withdrew them back off the roadways, and shortly thereafter, they started hearing signal shots along the road, which was the normal practice for opening up the road at night. And Jax decided that there was too much NVA activity in that area that he would cancel their mission. So in the meantime, the diversion element had moved up to the road. And when we got there, directly across the road from where we came up on it there was a bomb crater. And it was kind of on the side of a hill. And it actually provided a perfect ambush position for us because we were elevated about 3 or 4 feet above the road, but we were like within 6 foot of the road. So we could actually see down inside the trucks and see if the trucks were carrying troops or rice or whatever. And we could put our claymores right along the edge of the road there. It was a perfect ambush site. So at any rate, we went ahead and set up, and about the time we got everything ready to go, it was almost dark, and we got a message from Major Jacks. He said that they had been compromised and had scrubbed their mission. The diversion element should continue the mission and try to capture a driver. So here we were. There were 5 of us sitting in this bomb crater. You know, our mission up to that point had been diversion. We were just supposed to hit the next thing that come in the kill zone. So we were programmed to kill, not to capture. And turns out we were actually set up on the wrong side of the road because the driver would be away from us on the other side of the truck. But by this time it was almost dark, and we decided we would just go with what we had because we just couldn't take the chance of trying to change our claymores and everything at this point in time. So we did. And shortly thereafter, we started hearing the signal shots going down the road. That was the way the NVA cleared for traffic to begin. And soon after that, the trucks started rolling by. And we knew this was going to be pretty risky operation, you know, from the get-go, but we were not anticipating so much NVA activity in the area. So we knew that over there where Major Jacks was, he was about 300 meters, 400 meters from us. He had already scrubbed his mission because it was too active. So a discussion began of, should we really even try to do this? Is it just too dadgum risky, you know? And pretty soon these trucks started rolling by, and they were probably rolling by at about 5 to 7, maybe 10-minute intervals. But we didn't know it until the truck started. But down the road from us, probably about 150 meters, there must have been a stream, because we could hear the trucks gear down and go slowly across the stream, and then they would start up this incline towards our position. And you could tell they were going pretty slow because they were going through the gears, shifting gears. And so it turned out that when they actually passed our location, they were going pretty slow because they were just getting rolling again. And that worked out pretty good for us. So, you know, a truck would come by, and we could see it, and none of them that came by had any troops. They were all carrying some kind of cargo. And all the trucks had a 55-gallon drum in the back of the bed, which was their auxiliary fuel tank. And so we were there. Trucks kept coming by, and every time a truck rounded the corner coming towards our position, the discussion would be, do we hit this one or not? Or, you know, back and forth, and really couldn't decide because you only wanted to hit a single truck. You didn't want to hit trucks that were too close together. You didn't want to hit a truck that had troops, and start a firefight. But at any rate, so this went on for quite a while. And I think by about 10:30 that night, 23 trucks had passed our location. And the general discussion was, this is just too dadgum risky. There's just too much activity in the area, But old First Sergeant Todd, he spoke up and he said, this is a risky effing business. We're going to do what we came to do. Okay.
Wow.
So about that time, another truck rolled around the curve down there. There was a curve in the road, probably 50 meters down the road. And I actually had the clacker to the claymores because I was the demo man on the team. And when the truck moved into the kill zone, I could see that there were no troops on it. So I squeezed that clacker. 4 claymores ripped through the night. And it was on then. The plan is that we would blow the charge. Hartwick and Blau would move to the far side of the truck and snatch the driver. I had an M79 grenade launcher, so I would move to the near side of the truck and provide cover up and down the road. If anything came, I would engage them while they were trying to get the driver. And Todd and the Arvin would stay in the bomb crater, and they would man the flank claymores. We had a claymore on each flank, and with a canteen full of CS powder attached to the claymore. But what happened, as soon as I blew the claymores, the Arvin on the left, who obviously didn't understand the plan, blew his flank claymore. Okay. Well, that created some confusion because the other team members thought that we were taking an incoming round or something, because he wasn't supposed to be blowing a claymore. So they thought it was an incoming grenade or something. And they began shooting. So they fired up a magazine out of their M16s, basically. And when they stopped and they were changing magazines, I moved down to my position on the near side of the truck. And I looked back up and I saw the other guys, they were putting on their protective mask. Because what we didn't know, well, we knew there was a canteen of CS powder in the claymore, but there was also on the Arvin side, he put a WP grenade over there. So all of a sudden, the place was burning. There was CS powder, and you didn't really want to have to put on a gas mask, while you're trying to do an ambush, right? So when I saw that they were putting on their protective masks because they'd been gassed more than me down on the road, I ran to the far side of the truck to see if I could snatch this driver. Well, when I got over there, the door was open, but the cab was empty. And then I had this immediate thought, I'm sitting here with an M79 with the HE round in the chamber, and some here right behind me in these bushes is an NVA truck driver. I don't know if he's wounded or dead or alive or armed or not armed or what. So I was kind of expecting to get shot in the back while I was searching the truck. But I didn't have to think about it much, because in just a split second, the whole road turned to daylight, because there had been holes shot in the fuel drum, and all that was leaking out on the road, and the WP that was burning ignited it. So the whole road just turned to daylight just instantly. Well, almost simultaneously, a truck did come around the corner with troops on it, and they began to firing at us. So, my job was to engage the truck, so that's what I did. I started pumping 40 millimeter rounds down there. The truck was, barely in the light from the fire. I could see them. I really don't think they could see me, because the fire was between me and them, and so I think they didn't know that I was exactly where I was. But anyway, So I started pumping rounds down there, and about that time, I started getting a whiff of this CS gas. So I moved up towards the front of the truck and put on my protective mask, and then I moved to the near side of the truck, continued to pump 40 millimeter rounds down there, and they were still firing all this time. And I looked up and I saw that the team was withdrawing up the hill. And so I scuttled over to the bomb crater where I had some cover, and I kept firing the M79 rounds downrange. And after a few minutes, there was a lull in the firing, so I hauled ass and caught up with my team going up the hill there, withdrawing. The bad news is, because they withdrew up the hill, and they did that because they were on that side of the road, we were going in the wrong direction. Our extraction LZ was in the other direction. So we would have had to cross the road to head towards the extraction LZ. So we scurried on up the hill, probably a couple of 100 feet. And there was a little depression up there. So we got in that depression and set up a little security. We were really, really close together. It was kind of heavy brush, but it was a little depression. It gave us a little bit of cover. So the NVA moved along the road down below us and just started firing up the hill. They didn't know where we were, but they knew we were up there somewhere. And the road kind of went around the base of that hill. So they just were all along the road shooting up there. And about that time, Covey got on station, and he asked us to mark our location. He was going to call in some TAC air. And our team leader made the decision that it was too risky to mark our location, because at the time, the NVA didn't know exactly where we were. And so he thought we were better off just, not trying to mark our location, because we'd had to do that with some kind of a flare or something, because it was night. And so at any rate, about an hour or so later, another truck came by, and they hooked on with chains to this truck that we had blown up, and drug it off the road. And lo and behold, traffic started again. Trucks started moving. And so we spent the rest of the night there on 110% alert. And we knew that the next morning the NVA would be online coming up that hill looking for us. So before first light, we under a poncho liner, red filter flashlight, we did a little map study, and the team leader picked an LZ a few 100 meters away, and we were moving before it got daylight towards that extraction LZ. And after a couple of hours, we got to it and called for extraction. And so when the Cobras come in to clear the area, they didn't take any fire. But when the first slick came in to try and sit down, the whole wood line over there opened up. So we engaged the wood line, and again, I had the M79, so I was able to do some kind of suppressive fire there. And we started withdrawing, and I tried to cover the team's withdrawal. And so the Covey worked the SPADs on that ridge line with the CBU 25, and so the team withdrew. This time the Covey directed us to another LZ, which was probably about 300 to 400 meters away. And we got to that LZ, again, set up a perimeter, and he called for extraction. Cobras came in, and no fire. But again, when the first slick came in, an RPD opened up off to the right over there from this ridge. And but I had a clear shot at him with that M79, so I was able to take him out. and the chopper was able to land. And then, we scurried on board, and we were taking small arms fire going out, and we kept shooting, and finally flew back to the FOB and linked up with the other 7 team members. They had been extracted earlier that morning without incident, and flew back to the FOB for debriefing, but no prisoner. Jason, I can't hear you, buddy.
Sorry, that better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I said, so everybody got back alive.
Yes.
Wow. And did you ever find the prisoner? I mean, the truck driver?
No. Because like I say, it was so chaotic. When I went over there, the truck door was open. So I'm assuming when we blew the claymores, he
gone
out and boogied. I mean, that's, and like I said, we were set up on the wrong side of the truck to actually do a POW snatch, because again, that wasn't our initial mission. And so he's probably still running, but but all the things I told you about, from the time we initiated the ambush, the Arvin almost immediately fired that flank claymore, and then the shooting began. We moved down, and then the CS powder, and then all of a sudden the thing exploded into flame, and here come the reaction truck. I mean, all this happened in a matter of seconds, not minutes. It just, was total chaos there for a while. But we were blessed there with our skins.
One thing I know last time you were telling me about your German sergeant who had been a veteran of World War II. And now I know a little bit about Major Jacks, that he was a Czechoslovakian guy, right? And he had also served during World War II. So he must have been a very experienced guy. And I've heard a lot of good things about him. He seemed to be quite a well-loved guy, or, respected commander.
He was a good guy, and he knew his stuff. So turns out when I left Vietnam and went back to Thailand, he was my commander over in Thailand over there. So
well, that was good.
Yeah, it was good. But yeah.
So from all your SOG missions, was Ashtray one of the scariest?
I would say the scariest to me personally was the bright light operation, and I say that because when we went on that bright light, I think I told you already, another team had declared a prairie fire emergency up at one of the northern targets. And so all of our assets relocated up to Doc Peck, to the launch site up there. So all of the Cobras, the Slicks, everything was up there, Covey. So when we did the bright light, it was just a single helicopter flying to Laos to go try and rescue this door gunner. And we had no assets. So we knew if we made any kind of contact at all, that was it. So in terms of risk, I think that was a more risky operation. But surely ambushing a truck in the middle of Laos with a 5-man team is not the best of conditions,
And now a question for you. Was there also an Ashtray 2?
There was. A few weeks later, John Plaster and I think Willie McLeod put together a team. And but they took, I don't know if they took 10 or 12, but they were all Americans, and they all stayed together and set up, and they used basically the same demolition setup that we had experimented with and knew would work. They may have modified it a little bit, but it's basically the same. But they were able to stop a truck and capture the driver because they weren't in a compromised location like we were, and they did catch a prisoner. So
Yeah, I think everybody who is has an interest in SOG has read John's books, and you know, yeah. I mean, I'm looking up here above the camera, and I have most of the well-known SOG books. He definitely paints a as accurate as possible. But one thing, you know, that I think a lot of people ask, and I asked it, were you scared? And every combat veteran that I've talked to has said to me, if you're not scared, or if someone tells you they weren't scared, then they're lying to you, because, I mean, and I guess the main thing, it seems to back up that if you've been trained properly over and over, and at least you can fall back on your training, whereas that seems to have saved the day. And for your team, for those gentlemen in Ashtray 1 to all get out alive, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, we were definitely blessed. I, but you asked the question, were you scared? Yeah, but you still do what you got to do, and it just the adrenaline's pumping, and uh, so that was just the business we were in.
Yeah. I guess scared really wouldn't be the word. I guess, anxiety would be a better word. Was it anxiety? I don't want to paint to the public that any of you guys were scared. That's the wrong terminology. But I think anxiety, did you have anxiety when you were there? Or did you think about, am I going to make this home? Or, wow, this is a cluster, what this, and I'm sure that the anger on that Arvin guy, like, you wrecked the whole operation.
Yeah, we did.
So, I mean, obviously that's why with Plaster, he went out and said, look, we're doing an all US team. We're not risking that.
Yes, but I think your words describe, instead of scared or anxiety, the pucker factor.
Yeah.
I think that really describes it the best.
And I guess another question is that you're a young man, and I'm going off on a tangent. You're a young man, and you've been in all these, situations. And when your military career was over, and I know you stayed in for a long time, did that training, as far as seeing a task that had to be, completed, even though you may not like it, did you take aspects of your military training into your everyday life after the military?
I think so. When I initially retired, I went to work at the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in New Orleans, in the emergency management portion of that. And kind of because of my experience, they made me the manager of the Emergency Operations Center. So it kind of fit in there. We had some high stress situations there. In fact, that's the job I was in during when the first Gulf War started,
Wow.
and there were drawdown of the petroleum reserve. In 30 days, we sold and pumped and delivered 17 million barrels of oil. So again, that was a very high stress environment. Nobody was shooting at us, but it was still a very high stress environment. So I think my military background helped me, operate effectively in that job.
And so, I'm just looking at our notes here. I mean, there's so many amazing notes that you've written for me. Oh, okay. So thank you for telling us about Ashtray and Ashtray 2. That was a great, and I must say that your memory is on point. Like, just the names and the details. I mean, you're very blessed to remember, or not, but your details are spot on. So
Never forget.
So here's a question that I had, and I'm sure the viewers also have been intrigued by many pictures of your car 15 and other gentlemen, and you have a forward hand grip on that. Now that was not stock.
No.
That was customized. So, and what's interesting is in today's military rifles, a lot of them do have that forward handle on there, forward grip. So how did that come about for you? Did you hear about somebody else and go, hey, I want that?
No, it was out of necessity. Every recon team had their own standard operating procedure, and they were all a little different, but they were all very similar. Well, our team SOP on RT Texas, when we started it, is that we all had a 30-round magazine as the first magazine in the weapon. And I have to tell you that we didn't get those through Army channels in those days. We bought them from a sporting goods store in California and had them mailed to us. So we all had one. But that magazine was on our team was full of tracer rounds. And the philosophy was, if you can get this wall of red going out, you can really get some heads down quick and give you a few seconds to break that contact and start moving out. So that was part of our immediate action drill, was to get this wall of tracer fire going down range. The problem is, in that CAR 15 with the short barrel, you fire 30 tracer rounds through there and you cannot hold that upper hand grip. It absolutely would fry your fingers. So we had to innovate, and we went over to the S4 and got some M16 hand grips, and to make it fit right, took a hacksaw and sawed the top of it at an angle, and then we took the forearm grips off and bolted that handle through the bottom of it, put them back on, and so it would allow you to hold on to your weapon as you were. We were not trying to make like a submachine gun or a. It was just something that we could hold on to the weapon when it got so hot so quick. That's what it was about.
I've had the opportunity over the years to talk to Lynn Black a lot, and it's all been over email or Facebook. And he was telling me about instinctive shooting, and I don't think that for any non-military or non-police people, they really know what instinctive shooting is. And he had told me, he said, well, if you ever come down this way, buy like a BB gun, and I'll show you. And he was saying that his training sergeant, they were in like a barn or something, and they would throw up a can, and he would have to try and shoot it with this Red Ryder BB gun. And every time it would fall on the ground because Lynn would be aiming at it. And he said, no, you're not listening. He said, you will get it. So would you be able to tell the public a little bit about what instinctive shooting is?
Well, I think it's a lot like skeet shooting, especially if you start like at the international position with your gun down instead of on your shoulder. But basically, when that bird comes out, you don't try to aim at the bird. You swing through the bird and you pull the trigger as you're swinging through on that. And so I think that's kind of what he's talking about, instinctive shooting. It's something you just develop a feel for. But we fired many rounds of ammo while we were there. Because we did a lot of training down at the yard camp range, and our yards fired thousands of rounds. Our indig that carried M79s took the sights off of their M79 because they got caught up in the jungle vines and stuff so bad. But they could still, at 100 meters, put a round through a truck tire. I mean, they were just, that good. But that comes from many rounds of training.
I know it's not a pleasant factor of warfare, but I've read with some of the British SAS guys and the Navy SEALs. This article was about the Navy SEALs, and sometimes their thing was better off to get a shot off at an enemy, even if it hits them in the leg, it's going to slow them down. You can always walk the bullets up, higher up, as it were, but just to make the enemy, make them just an easier target, because where I'm going with this is in the movies, everyone is up, they're taking their time to aim that sight. But you don't, if you're in the jungle, you don't have time to do that. You're going to be dead, right?
Well, truth be known, most of the time, most of the firefights that recon teams got into in the jungle, you rarely saw the individual that was shooting. You saw the muzzle flashes, you hear the sounds, you know where it's coming from, and you return fire at that. Now, certainly there were times when you saw a man and you actually put him, in your sights and shot, but whatever. But I'm just saying the majority of the time, it was not like that, where you had a clear guy just standing there and you pulled a bead on him and shot him. Most of the time, you were shooting at movement, muzzle flashes, noises, that kind of stuff. And because your whole objective initially is to break contact. And you don't want to get into a firefight with an NVA company, with 5 or 6 guys. That's not good business. So your job is to break contact and move away and try to call in some airstrikes on them.
So you were mentioning that on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, that they would do their signal shots to then tell the drivers, okay, it's time to go. But did you ever hear, that the NVA with their bamboo, they're making noises in the jungle, because I've heard that before as well, if they were trying to find you or something?
I never experienced that, no.
Bugles, I know that the NVA, they like their bugles, but I suppose that was more of a company or something, right?
I would imagine, yeah. What they did is just before dark, along those highways out there, that a single guy would go out. Well, normally, what I've seen, okay, is it'd be like 4 or 5 guys walking down the road, and then one would kind of break off, and the other ones would continue another couple hundred meters. Another one would break off, and when the guy breaks off, he would make a sweep, just a kind of a square off the road to check the perimeter along both sides of the road. And when he came back and his area was clear, then that's when he would fire a single shot. And that tells people down the road that, okay, my section of this road is clear. And once he fired, then the next guy and on down. And after you hear 4 or 5 of those single shots, trucks start moving. That's the way it worked.
Do you think that we should talk about a fun story? How about Frank the pig?
Frank T?
Yeah, Frank T.
Okay, well, at FOB2, we had a snake. It was a python named Georgia. And Georgia was about 9 feet long. And it was kind of a ritual, but we fed Georgia every 12 days. And that process was we'd take Georgia out to the mortar pit, and guys would sit around the edge of the mortar pit, which is this hole dug in the ground, and put the snake in there, and we'd put a couple of chickens, and everybody would watch the snake eat the chickens, because they just kind of swallow them whole. And so we were easily entertained, in those days. So watching chicken was okay. So we decided that we would give Georgia a variety in her diet. And we went downtown and bought a little pig. He's about this tall and probably weighed about 5 pounds, just a little baby pig. And we put the pig in the mortar pit with the snake, and the snake just curled up. The pig went and laid down on the snake, and they both went to sleep. And the snake didn't want anything to do with eating the pig. So now we got a snake and a pig. So so we decided to keep the pig, and we named him Frank T after Major Jacks, because Major Jacks was Frank T. Jacks. And so we kept him in the team room. And believe it or not, a little pig is really quite clean. And we if you live in a concrete floor like that, you can clean up after him pretty easy. But we actually would take Frank T on a little leash outside, walk him around, and he would do his business and all that. And he got up to about 30 pounds. And the sergeant major found out that we had a pig in the team room. And he came over and he took the pig and took it over to the Sioux mess hall. They had actually had a pig pen out behind their mess hall because they ate fresh, pigs all the time. And so he put Frank T in the pig pen. And so we knew he was going to become a meal for the Montagnards. So we went over that night and stole Frank T, rescued him out of the pig pen and took him back. And then we kind of kept him underground for the next few weeks, moving him from one team room to another. So the sergeant major couldn't find him. And but we ended up barbecuing Frank T when he was about 75 pounds. He was a little tough to conceal after that, but
he had a good life up until then.
He did.
So here's one that I know that every SF guy has memories of and probably shrugs, and it's not what the public thinks. It's actually rice wine. So I've seen the pictures of guys, and they've always said that the locals said, "Oh, you got to get your straw right down to the bottom, and that's where all the dead bugs." And so, but it worked, but it also had one heck of a hangover. So, did you?
Well, their rice wine, they had these crocks that were maybe 10, 12 inches in diameter and 2.5, 3 foot tall, and they would put all their ingredients in there, rice and I don't know what else. I never asked. And they would actually bury this stuff underground, and it would stay there who knows how long, but it would ferment and become wine. Okay. But the way they did it, if there was a time for a celebration, like the day you're going to get your yard bracelet or something, they always had, rice wine with that. So they bring one of these crocks out and have a long bamboo straw that's stuck all the way to the bottom. And they take a small piece of bamboo and lay it on the top of the jug. Okay. And it's got a little tick coming down, and the tick goes into the rice wine. So the objective is when it's your turn, you're supposed to suck on the straw and drink rice wine until that tick is out of the liquid. All right, that's how much you're supposed to drink. And then one of these yards would take a Donald Duck orange juice can full of water and fill it back up to where the stick across. And so the story goes, by the time that water he poured in got to the bottom, it was rice wine again. It was so potent. So it's like you could never drink this thing dry, they just kept adding water to it. And it would make you give back stuff you hadn't even stolen yet. I'll tell you, it was.
So this is you were talking about that when you got your bracelet, it was because I never knew about this. I knew about the bracelet, but it was kind of a celebration. I mean, that they would give you this one or give you the.
Yeah, it wasn't. They didn't just give you a yard bracelet. We all went to the village and we had a little feast there, and there was no formal ceremony per se, but there was a ceremony. Okay, they wanted to make it a very special occasion because they don't give those things to just anybody. That's a symbol of brotherhood, and so it was a very special day for them and us to do that.
So do you think that for some of the SF guys who've gone back to Vietnam, and if they were wearing a bracelet and they were to see one of the yard people, would they recognize that would they treat them differently? Like, do you think that? I
suspect they probably would. There were different tribes of Montagnards, the Brew, the Rade, the whatever. But their customs were very, very similar. So I think, yes, that would probably be recognized and accepted.
And you're, I guess, what else? I was going to ask you something else. Now I'm having a mental fog myself. So how about if we talk about rope ladders? Now, what I heard about rope ladders is that you have to go up them on the side. You can't go up the middle. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
if you try to climb a rope ladder on the face of it, yeah, understand our rope ladders weren't rope at all. Okay. They were made out of aluminum rungs. They were about 3 foot wide. They had cables, and there was a cable in the middle. So they were very strong. And but the bottom is loose and flopping around down there. Okay. So when they roll that thing out of a helicopter, if you tried to get and climb it like a regular ladder, your feet just go straight that way because you got all this weight and the weight's on your back and it just pushes your feet. I mean, you'll be horizontal before you know it. And then you're not strong enough to do it. So to actually climb the ladder, you have to get on the side. And because of the way it's made, your feet won't go out from under you that way. So you could go up on the sides. But, my experience was that most of the times, if we were coming out on rope ladders, the whole objective was just to get up that ladder a few rungs and actually put your legs through and snap into that cable and hold on and just ride it back to the launch site because it was so difficult to climb up there. You got 80 pounds of gear and the prop blast is going, it's moving. It's really, really hard to climb a rope ladder. So everybody would just get on, snap in, and get out of there.
Did you have a favorite way of being extracted, like the Swiss seat or other methods?
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said, did you have a favorite way of being, extracted, like on a Swiss seat or?
Well, when I first got there, we were, if you were extracted on strings, it was in a McGuire rig. A McGuire rig was nothing but a big nylon loop, about 6 foot tall. And all you would do is when they dropped that thing, you would open it up and you would sit in it. And we all had sling ropes that we carried with us. You could, wrap the rope around and tie yourself into it, but they had a loop up in the top that you could put, once you cleared the trees, you could put your hand in that loop and tighten it. And that way, if you got shot or slipped out or whatever, you at least would be hanging, by your arm. The advantage of the McGuire rig is you can get out of it. If you get drugged through the trees, you could get out of it. In the summer, I guess late spring, early summer of 1970, Chief SOG declared that we would no longer use McGuire rigs and would go to the stable rig.
Right.
Now, stable rig consisted of a rig that you had all of your load bearing equipment on, and there were 2 straps that you could put between your legs and snap in, and then there was 2 hooks up on the shoulders. And they dropped a rope that had a bar on it with 2 hooks hanging down, and you snap those hooks in, and they would extract you. The problem with the stable rig is once you're in it, and there's no getting out. So you've just lost control of your situation then. It's much safer once you clear that canopy and you're flying back. But again, you don't have any flexibility about how to get out of that thing. Once you're in it and got tension on it, you're there.
And I know that when you go up high, I mean, again, people assume that Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, yeah, it's a very hot environment. But when you're up there on a chopper, it can get very cold because you're covered with sweat from the jungle environment. Then you're up there. Then you're losing blood flow into your legs. So that's a multitude of things, right?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest consideration when you're coming out on strings, after the chopper gets up and starts its forward speed, okay, that's a nylon rope and it stretches. And when you sit there, you're hanging there and you look up that rope and you see these little nylon threads, ding,
Oh
ding.
God.
I'm serious, and you wonder how many little suckers got to break before this thing, before I go flat and stable all the way in. And you look very keenly at the knots and how they're tied and how much tail is actually sticking out, those kind of things. But I'll tell you the truth, Jason, if you had to come out on strings, you were so damn glad just to get out. You didn't worry about being cold or none of that other stuff. You were just thankful that chopper was there. So
we're heading into the last 10 minutes of this, and I think a really cool thing to end is is about the actual patch, the Recon Teen Texas patch, because there's such a following of people that collect these patches, and it's really neat to talk to a gentleman like yourself that had helped make that patch. So could you, as a final story for today, could you tell the public about that?
Well, when we didn't start RT Texas. We reformed RT Texas. Texas had been there before. In fact, RT Texas captured a prisoner back in the summer of '69, but somewhere around August, the team just went defunct because some guys were leaving, some guy got medevaced, another guy got reassigned, so there was just no Americans left on RT Texas, so it just came off the board. So after Ashtray, they called me in and said, "We want you to start a new team." Being from Texas, I just, named it Texas. So myself and Glen Uemura actually reformed the team, and some of the teams were making team patches at the time, and so he and I sat down and kind of designed. The star represents Texas, the Lone Star State, and we put the CAR 15 and Recon CCC, and the name Texas on there. And turns out, not long after we did that, I had an opportunity to go on a CCK flight to Taiwan. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the Blackbirds that supported our operation, these C-123s and C-130s, the front half of the plane was all a bunch of highly classified electronic stuff, and the passengers stayed in the back half of the plane. There was a curtain between. Well, because of all this sophisticated equipment, the Blackbirds had to go to Taiwan for maintenance. And that was called a CCK flight. And when they would go, they would take 4 or 5 guys from each of the 3 FOBs on a little free R&R, if you will. And the deal was you could stay there as long as the plane stayed there. If it was 2 days, that's it. If it was 5 days, whatever. But not to get sidetracked, but I got to tell you a funny story about that.
Sure.
We went to Taiwan, and so I had the team patches made there because the sewing was much better, the embroidery work, and we made some 1-0 jackets, black windbreakers with the patch and names and our code names and stuff. But anyway, we're there. I think it was day 3. Everybody stayed at the same hotel. That's how they kind of had a control on guys and the coming and going. And so we had a little formation get together every morning, and they would tell us, "Okay, we're not leaving today. Check back again tomorrow morning." Da da da. So the third day, the colonel, the pilot of the airplane came out and he said, "Okay, we're leaving today. They're all done with the maintenance. We're going to be leaving at, I don't know, 1300 or whatever." So everybody, "Oh man, we just got here, and so we went out, got on the plane, cranked it up, and he's going down the taxiway there. And one of the guys, I'm not at leisure to say who, but anyway, one of the guys went over to the crew chief and said, "Hey, you got something back here you need to look at." Said, "What's that?" He took him back there, and under the seat was a dead rat. Well, crew chief called the pilot, got a dead rat on the plane. So he turns it around, goes back, shuts it down. Because I guess the rule was if you found a dead rat on the airplane, you had to go and check all the wiring in the airplane. So turns out that somebody went out behind the hotel and got a dead rat out in the garbage, carried it on the plane, put it under the seat. And so we stayed 5 more days in Taiwan.
Well, that's cool. And so, yeah, that's, I mean, those are cool stories. So you got the patches made, and then now you had told me, and I had seen online that the color, there's so many fake patches out there. But you
Yes.
said that originally, 50 years ago, when you had those patches made, they were a deeper blue than what is currently seen. Is that
Yes,
what you said, right?
that's correct.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that if you go onto eBay or any collecting sites, those patches fetch some good money. And there's so many fakes out there, and so many young people or new people to collecting get stung by that, you know, and they're making them in the same way that they used to make them. So, yeah, you know, you got to be careful. So these little tidbits of you saying that originally they were a lot darker, you know. Well, Bill, it's 1 hour on the dot. So we agreed that we would do that. So I think we'll end for today. I've tried to mix it up to have some serious stories and some fun ones. So I hope the public enjoy the mix. I don't want to be asking you too many questions about combat over the years. So I think that we'll conclude this one for today. So
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.